When you start out with email address collection, storage is not usually a problem. A simple spreadsheet will do. But as your online business builds, you are sure to find that you need a more appropriate and long-term solution. Hello, my name is Johan Kleis and I'm a marketing coach helping people like you to understand the intricacies of email-based marketing. And in this course, I'm going to explain how you can add your email addresses to an email marketing application. Or if you're still working on a spreadsheet, I will show you how you can migrate your spreadsheet database over to a more appropriate solution as your business grows and matures. When you start out with email address collection, storage is not usually a problem. A simple spreadsheet will do. But as your online business builds, you are sure to find that you need a more appropriate and longer-term solution. So the title of this webinar is entitled How to Store Contacts' Email Addresses. There are several possible ways you might do this. So I think that we should start first with the principles, and then you will be better able to make the choice that is right for you. The first principle is that your collection of email addresses is essentially a database, and databases rely on fields. Each field represents a discrete piece of information, which can be associated with another discrete piece of information. Think of a field as the heading of a column in a database. Here is a simple spreadsheet with fields that are both simple and obvious. This is a flat file database, and email is one field, first name is another field, surname is a third field. And because the data for each contact in the spreadsheet is on the same line, each horizontal line is assumed to represent a data file for that contact. Proper email management systems rely on a more sophisticated structure called a relational database. In fact, we're going to connect different flat files together by using an identifier and relate these flat files and tie these flat files together so that they can make up a relation. So an email management application, in fact, should allow you to easily enter information into the database and prevent inconsistencies and make sure that you don't have duplicate records. And then it should be very flexible about how you can get information out of the database or perform actions on the information, such as sending an email to specific people and not to others. Here on this slide, I show you the simple process of manually adding a contact to an email marketing application. And it looks straightforward enough, but I'm showing you this because I want to point out a potential problem if you ever migrate your data. In fact, when you compare the naming of the fields in the spreadsheet that you have and the email storage solution, then you will see that the three common field names do not match with the same fields in the email management application example here. So if you ever import your database from a spreadsheet to an email marketing application or from one application to another, you need to match the names of the fields if you want to be sure not to lose any of the data. Equally, the fields on your form should match. You can see from this example how easy it is to have mismatching field names, and then it becomes really a headache to sort it all out. So remember, you have your spreadsheet with your field names, and you will need to map them with the field names in your email service application. And then last but not least, you will also need to map them with the fields on your form. So now that this is out of the way, I would like to consider the different email management solutions that are available. And there are two main considerations in your choice. And those are whether the way you want to work is list-centric or contact-centric. A list-centric email service provider, like MailChimp, focuses upon lists rather than the actual email address itself. If a person is on two lists, for example, a newsletter list and a webinar list, then MailChimp will count as two contacts, and you will pay accordingly. In contrast, a contact-centric email service provider like ActiveCampaign does not rely on lists in the same way. Instead, the contact is tagged. So a single contact may be tagged for the newsletter as well as a webinar, but in this case, they still count as only one contact. The mailing of an email campaign will be dictated by the tags that you select for that particular campaign. And as you see, like in ActiveCampaign, you will only end up with one list. And on that list, all the contacts will be tagged accordingly. There will be ones who will have adhered for the newsletter and will have attended for a webinar. Others will have signed up for an ebook. So that will differ. So this is what I mean with contact-centric. So before I continue, perhaps there are some questions. If there are, please do not hesitate. There is a chat box, so I can answer eventually the questions you might have. All clear to now. Okay, I have here a contact. Maya, she says that everything is crystal clear, so that's great to read that. So this means that I can probably continue my presentation. Thank you. So there is something that I would like to point out as well, is that you need to be careful, especially when you're working with list-centric applications, because you need to be careful with duplicating contacts, because this may cause you problems. Besides being charged again for the same contact on each list, as I pointed out earlier before, you may end up with two disjointed lists where contact information for the same contact differs a bit on each list, and it may be that neither is complete. And also, contacts might be mailed more than once with each newsletter. And I don't need to tell you that gives a very bad impression when you mail your contacts multiple times with the same communication. So I personally prefer ActiveCampaign as my email service provider because in its basic functions, perhaps it may be not as attractive as some of the other solutions like MailChimp, iContact, ConvertKit, GetResponse, etc. But what sets it apart is that it also has its own customer relationship management or CRM system. It's a kind of stripped down Salesforce and a very elegant system for creating complex and sophisticated automations. It is contact-centric and it allows integrations with Chrome, SMS gateways, e-commerce, and other platforms. And I am really mad about automation, so I need to be careful not to run away on that topic. Instead, I want to bring you back to that form that we made and show you how the data goes from the form and into the spreadsheet or email management system. And to make that happen, in fact, we're using an API. An API is a kind of common boundary shared by two applications that allow them to communicate with one another. So it's a sort of middleman. And it is the API that allows the email service provider to store the data that comes in from the form and then permits the sending of the relevant lead magnet, like an ebook, to the correct person's inbox. And as you see up here in the slide, you see the form, you have the API, which will send out an email with the link to the ebook and which will provision the list. And it depends on the fact if you're using a contact-centric or a list-centric email service application. It might be ActiveCampaign or perhaps another list-centric, which is then MailChimp or perhaps Aweber. So that's what I wanted to point it out about APIs, because the question you could ask is, how to automate that transfer? And that's all about the API. It is to automate the transfer of the form data into the email marketing application. And that's often the point where beginners stumble. And I will explain you that secret sauce of how you can achieve this. In fact, the purpose of an API is to give you a way to your application to talk to another application. And you do that by providing API keys. One application does a request to access using the API key information, and the other application will check if the API key is authorized to access or not. So, in fact, you're telling to the form, here is the key, and you can go to the email service application with that key, and you will have access to authorize the application. That's how it works. Now, sometimes it can be a bit tricky to identify the mechanism to locate that API of your email storage solution and also the place on the form where you can connect it. But a call to support will soon put you right. So it's really straightforward to make that happen. Let me show you practically how you can connect a form that we have created in a landing page builder like Thrive Architect to the API of ActiveCampaign. I am in the Thrive Themes landing page builder now looking at all the active API connections that I have set up. One of the API connections that I have set up is with the ActiveCampaign service. And as you can see, I have provisioned the API URL and the API key in order to make that connection work. Now, what I would like to show you now is how you can connect a form that you have built in Thrive and how you can make advantage of that API connection, and specifically the API with ActiveCampaign. I have prepared a page. We're going to have a look at a landing page where people can collect an ebook. By simply clicking on a button, there will be a light box popping up with a form. And it is that form that we need to connect through that API connection with the ActiveCampaign service. So we're going to connect that form element which is on that lightbox. We have the full name and the email, and we need now to connect that form with the service by selecting the API. So we click on ActiveCampaign. We're going to indicate the mailing list as from within ActiveCampaign that we would like to provision, and also indicate the form that is used, in fact, to map the fields that we have on our form in Thrive with the form in ActiveCampaign. Once that we have indicated, you see the form fields appearing. We need simply to confirm and indicate a post in action. It means that once that people have submitted the form, we're going to indicate the location where people can download the ebook. You can simply save and preview the page. Most important is in fact that the data will be provisioned in the ActiveCampaign service in the right lists by using the right form. This is how you can create a form in a landing page builder and make advantage of an API connection in order to provision ActiveCampaign. So this was an example with Thrive Architect, which is actually a landing page builder solution, which is a plugin in WordPress. But in fact, whether you're using like this solution or a standalone page builder solution like Instapage or Leadpages or any other standalone landing pages, or eventually that you're using a form builder solution, they will always provide you with functionality by which you can connect your email service platform through API. Whether it would be ActiveCampaign, whether it would be MailChimp, normally you will always be able to make that connection. So what I wanted to say as closing slide is in fact that it is very important to understand how you can store your contacts' email addresses. First, you have to make that difference if you're going to choose for a list-centric or a contact-centric solution, because that might be important when you start out financially, but also to make sure that you can grow with the solution. But afterwards, important is also to know how you can store the contact using the API keys so that you're sure that you can, in fact, make a workable solution in order to provision your forms with the data that is submitted and that it's collected the right way in your email service platform. So understanding how to store your contacts' email addresses will help you better address them later.